All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brett McIntyre with Polk County Emergency Management, and I am in charge of our training and exercise programs. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn today. We're going to have Deputy Director Dutch Geisinger speaking to you today on physical security assessments and some tools that are out there to help you get some of these building assessments put together, self-assessments, some of the requirements that are needed for the various grant programs that you may or may not be involved with, and how we can help you get those done in a timely fashion so you can get applied for certain grants and funding and be able to do that without too much of a wait. So I'm going to hand it over to our Deputy Director here in just a little bit. First thing I'm going to do is kind of give you the lay of the land. If you haven't been here to the Polk County EOC in a while, or this is your first time, most important thing, we do have some coffee available for you over here on the side of the room, right below the AED. So go ahead and help yourself to coffee if you would like. If you would need some water or a refill of your water bottle, you can go through our back door here to the break room. On the back side of that, in the hallway, there is a water bottle refilling station and drinking fountain there for your convenience. If you need the restrooms today, just go back out the way you came, take a left. They are on the opposite side of these conference rooms here labeled C14 and C13. So on that back hallway, there's where you'll find the restrooms. That's also the way to our shelter. If we had any severe weather, we don't expect that today, but if we did need to get to the basement, go back out to the left and follow the signs, because it gets to be a bit of a maze back there. So I can't give you the exact directions, but it is labeled all the way to the basement. If we need to evacuate the EOC at any point, again, the easiest path is going to be right back out the way you came. If for whatever reason that exit is not available, right here on the side of the EOC, we can go out through the public health building, or the side of the building, and out the south entranceway. I think that's everything for our layout today. And I'll be here on the side of the room if you need anything. But with that, I'll turn it over to Dutch and let him take you through the next 45 minutes or so.
I know Brett said good afternoon, but we're working on that with him. So good morning. I want to give you just a little bit of my background. I've done a lot of training, education, outreach, and things like that as it relates to vulnerability assessment. So if you're looking at the years, you can tell I'm really old. I'm working on that. I'm trying to figure out how to retire. I haven't mastered that yet, but a couple of things that are on here are really important. And one of them is that I worked with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. The other one is Iowa Homeland Security. As part of that, part of the training that I received was related to a number of different types of assessments that are available through those programs. I want to introduce a couple people. One is hiding in the back of the room here, Chris Judge. Chris is with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He's Protective Security Advisor for Iowa. I did that same job in South Dakota for a while, for about 6 years. The other person I want to introduce is Jay Knox. Jay is with Safeguard Iowa Partnership. Jay does a lot of our outreach to private sector partners. He helps a lot with vulnerability assessments, with training, education programs. Both of these guys are incredibly helpful. They offer a lot of resources. So you can reach them through me, or you can reach them independently. Anything you want to add, Chris?
No, Dutch, but maybe I'll jump in during your presentation if you got it.
Excellent. I would appreciate that. So if you have any questions as we go through, please just shout them out. Get my attention somehow. Throw something at Jay, because I don't like heavy things hitting me. But throw them at Jay, get his attention, and we'll address them as we go. So the first thing is, why do we do assessments? So I'll open up to you guys. Why do you do assessments? Talk about vulnerability assessments. How many of you have done one for your facilities? See a couple of hands. How many times have we gone out to a training or a presentation, something like that, and we hear about that next shiny penny? Whether it's ballistic film for the windows, or security cameras, the newest in security cameras, and communications equipment. We hear about all those things. We tend to stick them in this cart of, that's really super cool. I really want to have one of those, or I want to have some of those for my facility. So we start loading up this cart with all these cool things that we could have. But what we forget sometimes is that we've got to do that horse in front of the cart instead of behind the cart. And we really got to understand the things that are out there that are threats, the things that are going to impact our facilities, our organizations, our mission, whatever that is. So we've got to understand the threats that are out there, what the vulnerabilities are based on those threats. We've got to understand our facilities. We got to know what the consequence is going to be. No matter what the probability is, if we're impacted by that threat, what's the consequence? So if we compile all those things, the threat, the vulnerability, and the consequence, that kind of gives us our risk rating, our risk analysis of what's going to affect us, what do we need to pay attention to, what are the priorities that we've got to pay attention to. Because our focus is really risk reduction. No matter what the threat is, we've got to look at how we can prioritize our threats. We've got to know what those things are that are out there that are really going to impact our facilities. We've got to be able to clarify our critical assets. How many of you have really paid attention to your facilities? And this is kind of rhetorical, but and understood what's critical to your missions. We call them critical nodes or key assets that are critical to us completing whatever our mission is. It might be meeting rooms, it might be personnel, it might be a critical piece of equipment, those kind of things. But a lot of times when I've gone out to facilities, they've never done that type of analysis to know what they're trying to protect. We've got to be able to identify the gaps. What can we protect? What have we protected? What do we still have that needs to be addressed in order to protect our facilities? So with all that, we can do a risk reduction strategy. Some of the things that we want to do are no cost or low cost. Some of them cost quite a bit. We're going to have to put them into a budget. So we put all that together with a risk reduction strategy. And it also helps us to justify what those needs are. So when we talk about grants later on, this helps us justify the need to apply for those grants or to get that piece of equipment, whatever that might be that we're trying to justify. So the other part of the why, the first part of the why is because we really want to do all those things to protect our organizations, right? The other part of the why is because the federal government also recognizes that importance of putting the horse in front of the cart. So they've made some requirements. Most of the preparedness grants that are out there right now, through FEMA, through Department of Homeland Security, require that you have a vulnerability assessment that goes along with your application for those security grants. So it's things like the nonprofit security grant, the Homeland Security grant program, school safety grants, those kind of things all require a vulnerability assessment that goes in with the application. So they've made it so we can do self-assessments for our schools, for our nonprofits, for our faith-based organizations, those kind of things. With one caveat, and that caveat is that there's got to be a concurrence with law enforcement agencies or with emergency management. So you can do your self-assessment, but we still have to come out and kind of walk through with you to make sure that what you've done for a self-assessment isn't really just focused on, I want to get that new cool camera, but it really identifies what the vulnerabilities are for our facilities. So I said a lot in that first piece, and one of the first things I get is, well, that's all awesome, but how do I get started? What do I need to do first when I go back? What are the first steps I can take to actually accomplish what we're talking about? If you start just Googling how do I do a vulnerability assessment, I guarantee you're going to come up with thousands and thousands of options of how you get started. And for the right amount of money, you can do just about anything you want. I'll be honest, it doesn't take that much money to get started with a vulnerability assessment. There's certain things that you can do when you go back to get started right away. One of the very first things you can do is you can put a team together and you can start gathering your resources. So just I'm just going to give you this question, and this is not rhetorical. I'm kind of hoping you guys will give me some feedback. Who from your facilities or your organizations do you think should be included in your team, your assessment team? This is that uncomfortable silence moment.
Probably our president, because our organization is that big, and so he would want to be involved in everything.
Sure, you got to have the decision makers, right? You got to have some decision makers in the room that can actually decide, is that even feasible? If we want to do the assessment, what kind of things are we looking at? So kind of that administrative component. Who else?
Facilities.
Facilities? Absolutely. We often leave off facilities. And that's that person with that big ring of keys. Maybe a key fob now, I guess I'm dating myself, but that can get into all those doors and the nooks and crannies, that knows where all the pieces are, the water shutoffs, those kind of things. That's really important. Who else?
Should it include everybody, frontline staff? I mean, they see things as well, that they can be a part of that team. They see vulnerabilities in their day to day.
I'm gonna caveat that a little bit. And the comment was, shouldn't it be everybody? Shouldn't everybody be included? Because everybody's gonna see certain pieces of vulnerabilities, security issues, those kind of things. You definitely want representation, right? If you get your team too big though, it becomes really unmanageable. So you've got to keep that representation down to the right amount of people. And usually it's about a dozen people or less that you can put together for an assessment team. Yeah, these are all really good folks. And there's some people inside your organization, there's some people outside your organization that you might want to try to include. This is just a quick list of things that you might want to consider. Administration, we talked about that, facilities and maintenance. Again, critical components that sometimes get left off, but we really got to include those folks. Security personnel, if you've got a security team, absolutely they should be included, and law enforcement. If you can get law enforcement to come to the table for your security assessment, they should absolutely be part of the team.
Sometimes that's a little problematic though, because cops don't get trained to do physical building security. They're just more reactive in law enforcement. I think Darren and I can attest that until we worked for a university that we didn't really know anything about physical security until we got, trained in what we're looking at and what we're doing, or you're a crime prevention officer, because otherwise you're just out there taking calls and making sure, maybe a risk manager type of a thing.
Yep.
Sometimes cops may not be the best. It's come from a cop, by the way, sorry. But it may not be the best person to do that, but.
Chief, I absolutely appreciate your point. And that's one of the things I was going to say. Sometimes we're not going to be able to get local law enforcement involved. We'd like them to be there. And a lot of times it's more for their understanding of what the facility layout is, what it's like there. I used to be our SWAT team commander at the police department I was at. I loved going to the assessments because it gave me a chance to snoop around those facilities. I got to know where everything was at. So if I ever got called there, I'd know the layout of the building. And that was great. It was completely probably for the wrong purpose, but I still would go along for those assessments. But yeah, and you're limited in time, right? And you're limited in people. So a lot of times we can't make all of those meetings, or law enforcement can't make those meetings. It's great to be invited. And they might have some information about threats that you might not get otherwise. So sometimes what I suggest is that you complete the assessment, have law enforcement look it over if they've got an opportunity. Make them part of the team if they can be included. Emergency management falls into the same category of really limited. Most agencies around the state are one person. So they're not going to be able to make every single vulnerability assessment that happens. But again, they've got some resources that are out there. One of the things I listed is the hazard mitigation plan, because they've already done some research, whether they've done it through contracts, about what the threats are in your communities. So they've got a list of the threats that they've identified. It might not be all inclusive. It might not include some of those law enforcement components to it, but it's got a lot of the natural hazards and some of the man-made hazards like chemical facilities, those types of things. National Weather Service is a great resource because they've got a lot of historic information. They can pull up what current trends are, all of those things. Again, if you can make them part of the team, that's great. If they can't make it, there's a lot of information available on their websites. These are just some ideas of things that you can go to. A lot of it is people that have been around a long time. They've got the historic information about the threats that impact your facilities. So if you can include that information, that's great. So you've got an idea of what's happened in the past. Does it always mean it's going to happen again? No, not at all. But now you've got an idea of what actually happened in 2008. Does anybody remember the floods from 2008? That kind of stuff. I mentioned this before, and it's really important that you understand your organization. So I've been doing this for quite a while, and I'm always surprised when I go to an organization and I ask them what their mission is. What's critical to your mission? They usually can identify the mission, right? We want to sell 85,000 widgets this year, or we want to teach so many people, or those kind of things. And I say, what's critical to your mission? What do you have here in your facility that if it goes away, it's going to stop you from completing your mission? And a lot of times, no matter what the company is, I get this look of, well, I never really thought about that. So if you're going to go back and you're going to do this type of an assessment at your facilities, you've really got to be able to understand your organization and know what's critical to your mission. So many times I hear, well, the C-suite, we've got to have those executives. And my answer back to them is, so what happens if your executives go away? What stops you from doing your mission? Well, we don't have the overall guidance. Can you still do your mission that day? Can you still do your mission that week, that month? When does it become impactful that you've got to have those C-suite decisions? And sometimes the answer is, well, we could probably go 6 months, we could go a year. And if the disaster or the situation lasts that long, absolutely, it's going to become critical. But the C-suite might not be your important thing that you want to protect. It might be that piece of equipment that you've got to get a replacement from Switzerland. And it takes 2 years to get that replacement from Switzerland. So know your organization and understand your organization. The first thing is knowing the mission and making sure that everybody knows the mission. What are we trying to accomplish? What's the end goal? Who here's in education? Anybody? Well, that's right. I forgot about you in the back of the room there. So if I were to come to you and just say, what's the mission of your of the schools? What would you tell me?
To teach and educate kids. I don't know the exact mission, but mine specifically is providing an environment conducive to teaching and learning within the facilities.
Yeah.
We go into our limiting factors.
Bottom line is, yeah, we want to educate kids. We want to make sure they have a safe environment to do it, right? So that's great. And usually I can get that part of it. It's when we get to the part about what's critical to your mission. What are your critical areas that we have problems? So, and I'm not going to put you on the spot for this because
No, it's fine.
you have I mean, you're part of the safety security issues, things like that. A teacher might have a completely different opinion than you got of what's critical, what's safe,
Right.
what they have to complete the mission. That's why it's so important that you have that team put together. We got to know what's critical to the success of the mission. Can you protect everything at your facility? No, the answer is probably not. Unless you have a really small facility, it's really, really difficult to protect every single piece of equipment, every single room at the facility. That's why that criticality is so important. What you're looking at is the risk management framework for the Department of Homeland Security. It's a little bit old, but it's still a goodie. So when you start to examine your facilities and understand your facilities, you got to look at things like the physical security, the cybersecurity, the human pieces of it that all go into that. What's the actual infrastructure and what's critical for you? Trying to walk through this, it's really important that you understand what your goals are of completing these vulnerability assessments because it's a never-ending cycle. You walk through this over and over again. Once you complete the assessment and you start doing improvements on those vulnerabilities or those gaps that you find, you're going to have to do another assessment eventually to find out where the gaps exist because it's going to change. Your priorities are going to change. If you can identify, again, what you're trying to protect, then you have to identify what you're trying to protect that from, right? Kind of the same thing. Can you protect all of your stuff from every single threat that's out there? Probably not. It's really important that we have a prioritized list of what those threats are. So we've got to look at different things. In my education and background, we looked at 3 critical areas. One was probability. So we put all these things into a giant funnel. What are the threats that are out there? We put them into a big funnel. What's the probability that those things are going to happen? We live in Iowa. What's the probability of a tornado? Is it high, medium, or low?
I'd say medium.
Medium. Medium, right? That's part of that team because you're going to have disagreements and misunderstandings and everybody's going to have a different opinion about it, whether it's high, medium, or low. Now, if your facility's been struck by a couple of tornadoes already, you're probably going to have a different opinion than if you've never been hit before. So some of this is subjective, right? It's going to be based on opinions. It's going to be based on background, all of those things that I talked about before. Probability plays a really big part of it. Probability carries a little bit more weight than some of the other areas. One of the other key areas is consequence. If that happens, no matter how low the probability is, if that does happen, are you going to suffer from loss of life or injuries? Is it going to be damage to your property? Or is it going to be just a business interruption? Again, those are all weighted differently. Loss of life obviously is going to carry a lot more weight than business interruption. And the last category is preparedness. How prepared are we for those types of disasters? Another Iowa thing, how prepared are most of us for a snowstorm?
Highly.
Yeah, we probably have all the stuff, right? We've got shovels and snow blowers and all that good stuff, ice remover. How prepared are we for an active shooter? Not quite as much, right? So we've got to count on some things. We've got to count on our plans, our development, our preparedness of, have we developed plans for it? Do we have response capabilities built into our organization? Or do we have to count on outside resources, and have we planned with them? Have we organized with them? Have we coordinated with them so that we've got access to those outside resources that exist? This is a long process and it does take a while, but the good news is there's a lot of tools out there for it too. Safeguard Iowa Partnership has a tool that's been created that it's a free tool. They're happy to share it with people. It's a threat prioritization tool. The one that I have up here is called Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente was developed for hospitals and medical facilities, but it's a great tool and it helps us walk through that prioritization. And if you can get the team to agree on the scoring, give you an idea what that looks like. That is really small. The slides will be available for this after we get done. Brett's going to post them, so you can take a look at this. But it'll walk you through all of these things, and what you end up with basically is a risk score for each of those threats. So you've got a prioritized list that you can use. And that's really important when we start doing that vulnerability assessment, because now we know what the threats are that we're facing, right? So we can identify where those gaps are at. We've got to be able to understand the consequences too. So now we know what the threats are, right? We've done the assessment. We know what our critical nodes are. So now we can weigh, we've got this bad thing that might happen. We know what the things are that we're trying to protect. So now what? So what? So what if we know that information? What's the impact that might happen? So again, we've got to do that consequence analysis. So now we've got a tornado that might come into town. Our building's made of glass, so it's not very safe. So what's that mean for us? So making those consequence statements and understanding those is really, again, that gaps analysis we have to have. We've got to be able to identify the gaps in planning, training, equipment, resources, exercises. We can't just develop plans and set them on a shelf. Do we practice those plans? Do we update the plans? All of that stuff that goes into it. And lastly, we have to identify what the vulnerabilities are, what exists. And that's where the vulnerability assessment comes into play. So it took me all this time to get to the vulnerability assessment, which is why you're here in the first place, right? But all this other stuff building up to the vulnerability assessment is critically important. We've got to do those steps, or vulnerability assessment doesn't mean a lot. There used to be a number of tools that were out there. ACAMS was one of them. It was an automated critical asset management system. And you could go in and you could put in any vulnerabilities you wanted. There were a lot of other trainings that were out there, MSRAM, maritime security, random accessibility measures or something like that. Again, it was kind of just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck. Right, but by doing this background stuff that I just talked about, you're going to get a really good product that can really drive things like planning, organization, budgeting, long-term plans, strategic planning for risk reduction. So now what? Now we get to the vulnerability assessment piece, right? There's a couple of different things that are out there. You've got your tools, you've got your threats identified, you've got them prioritized. You know what your critical nodes are, you've got your team together. There's a couple of things that can help you. There's some self-assessment tools that exist out there that we're going to walk through. And there's also assisted assessments. Resources are limited, like the chief said. And that's kind of what brought us to have the class today, is because every year about this time, we get notice that grants are being released. So the private security, the nonprofit security grant gets released about this time every year. And I'll get calls from tens of schools that I need to have a vulnerability assessment. I don't have that. or churches or other faith-based organizations. And they need to have these vulnerability assessments. What we've been able to work through with the state is the ability to have those facilities do a self-assessment. We've got to have that concurrence that goes along with it. So even if a school or a church completes their own assessment, we still have to go out, walk through with them, make sure that what they've identified fits all of these things that we've talked about already. For those really critical facilities, we still have opportunities out there. Among those, Chris, could you raise your hand again? He's a really good face to get to know. Chris is one of the people that can go out and help do those assisted assessments. There are some limitations, obviously, because his organization requires that they fit into certain categories in order for him to do those. Doing just a walkthrough with the facility is something that's a little bit easier to do, but it still has to meet certain criteria. So, and Chris is only one guy, right? He's got an entire half of the state that he's responsible for. Our office, we can actually go out and help with them. Cameron, if you could raise your hand. And myself are happy to go out and help with an assessment and help you walk through with a self-assessment. And we can also sign off on those concurrent statements. Jay, for private sector, I often refer things to Jay as far as the private sector goes. So there are some things that are out there that are available to you. State of Iowa also has a critical infrastructure protection program. Matt Schroyer is the guy at the state office that can help out with those things and schedule you with a vulnerability assessment or some assistance if you need it. So there's a couple tools that are out there right now that you can go to that are really, really well done. And I don't always promote government tools, but this is a really good tool. CISA, the agency that Chris works for, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, came out with a vulnerability assessment for houses of worship, faith-based organizations. And I know that it says that that's what those are for, but it actually could be used for a number of different facilities. And I would highly recommend that that's a great place to start if you haven't done one before. Because not only does it give you access to all those common vulnerabilities that are out there, it gives you what they call options for consideration in how to improve those gaps. So when you identify that I don't have locks on my doors, it will give you some ideas or suggestions in how you can improve your security posture. And those pop up immediately when you plug in the answers to your questions. So again, this is going to be available for you to take a look at. I wish I had time to pull all of these up today so you could take a look at them, but we're going to run out of time when it comes to questions and answers. So there's the cybersecurity self-assessment tool. It's called CSET. It is a really good tool from, again, CISA. It's a little more in-depth, a little bit more complex to use, but if you're into cybersecurity, if you're an IT department, they have a great program that's out there. They also have an assisted program that they can come out and they can actually help you with an assessment. Again, they're very limited in how many of those they can do and where they can go for those, but a great program, great opportunities. Through Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management, I mentioned this before, but they have a self-assessment tool there as well for schools. And it's related specifically to the school safety grants that were available a couple of years ago. So these tools, if you're with an educational facility, you're going to apply for a grant, you've done the vulnerability assessment piece or the initial piece of it, you can go to this and they can actually plug you in with a self-assessment tool related to schools, K through 12 schools. So this is another good tool for you to use. Their program can actually help you again with having somebody come out to do the assisted assessment. So to reach them, reach out at cip@iowa.gov. They can schedule, try to get you on a calendar. More than likely, when they get that request that comes in, if it's from Polk County, they're going to reach out to me and say, hey, can you do this one? Or should we put this on the calendar? Or can we do it together? So I'm going to hear about it as soon as you plug them in. Kind of the same thing goes for Chris. If Chris hears about one that's in Polk County, he's going to reach out to me and say, can we tag team this and we can work on it together? So, but that's available as well. I see I've got some folks that are in law enforcement in the room, and boy, do I have a deal for you. So there's one more tool that's out there, and it's a tool that is only available to those folks that have been trained in its use and are part of a team that I'm putting together right now. And this team is going to be able to do these assessments, but it requires a software download. And it's very specific and it's a protected system. It's offered through CISA, CISA again, but it's a great tool. And it offers us some opportunities to do these assisted assessments that are plugged into a program. It gives you immediate feedback, an immediate report upon completion that we can kick you back with those options for consideration that I mentioned before. If you're interested in being part of that team, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, chief.
I was looking at Darren. He's
Darren would be great to be on board with this as well. It's called the SAFE tool. It gives common vulnerabilities. It's an assessment tool that has been used for what, Chris, the past 6 years now?
About.
Ish. So very, very well gone through. It's tried and true. It's a very positive system. Happy to get you on board with that. And again, the restriction is that we've got to be part of that law enforcement approved team to use this tool. And to get to be part of that, all you got to do is send me an email and we'll work something out. So Dutch Geisinger at polkcountyiowa.gov. Brett, would you like to talk about this for a minute?
Sure. Kind of piggybacking on Dutch's speech today, the ideas that he's presented and the team opportunity. We had a training last year that was kind of related in the same family of courses from TEACS, Texas A&M Extension. And we have a second course that is part of their building and critical infrastructure security kind of certificate course. There's been a few of the other ones offered around the state as well. So coming up in November, on November 12th, it's MGT 452, Physical and Cybersecurity Infrastructure course. It is 1 day, 8 hours here at the EOC. We have the link on our page, on our website, on our training page. It'll also be in the notes here when we post those online. But it's a free course through TEACS that you can come here for a day, get some more in-depth knowledge and education on physical building security and cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. So that's our pitch. We do still have some seats open for that. There will eventually be a cap. I think we're probably about halfway there right now. But if you would like to do that, again, you can register through our website to the TEACS page. Just need a student account there. It's free to set up, but it is a 1 day course. So it doesn't require multiple days, doesn't require travel out of the county. Wednesday, November 12th coming up. So if you have interest in that or other members of your team that it would be useful for, be sure to pass that along.
Thanks, Brett. The other thing I want to do, I want to have Jay, if you wouldn't mind, I want to have Jay just kind of do a little bit of an introduction to Safeguard Iowa Partnership. It's a great program. They offer a lot of great training education. But just want to have Jay talk a little bit about Safeguard Iowa and what they're all about.
As you saw in Dutch's bio, he spent about 6 years in this position that I have as the executive director of Safeguard Iowa. A lot of the tools that we have were actually created when Dutch was here, that he brought over from Homeland Security and some of the things Chris do. Safeguard Iowa is a public-private partnership for the state of Iowa. We are a nonprofit 501c3 that we serve as the emergency support function 14, private sector coordination during actual disasters inside the State Emergency Operations Center. But knock on wood, most of our time during blue sky days is spent working with our private sector and nonprofit partners, providing training from the Homeland Security Grant Program. And some of those, one that really ties to that is our business continuity workshop. And it's really tailored to kind of small town Iowa. We'll partner with emergency managers and the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development. We'll go out and we bring these tools, the hazard vulnerability analysis, a similar physical security survey for them to use, and also a draft business continuity plan so that we can help some of our smaller, medium-sized businesses that have no plan or emergency preparedness other than the antivirus on their computers to develop some of those tools and use them to prioritize their threats as they start to work through that process. We also just do other training, some basic active threat, active shooter. As a former federal agent postal inspector, a lot of my time was spent working dangerous mail, powders, and bombs. And so we transitioned a course over that deals with suspicious mail identification and response. And we take those out freeze to our partners and our nonprofit sectors. We are either blessed or cursed that we're one of the agencies that Homeland Security has granted the ability to go out and help confirm your self-assessment so they can be used for part of the grant process. We tend to focus, when Chris and Dutch and I get together, we tend to focus more on our nonprofit partners who don't have the resources to contract others to go and do that. So if you have any questions, if being a part of Safeguard Iowa, you're a private sector business, nonprofit association, or a government entity, it's absolutely free. You go to www.safeguardiowa.org. And that gets you signing up, really just puts you on our contact list so that when things are happening during disaster, we have you as a contact, you have us as a contact. And it gives us that two-way street for emergency and disaster response that it seems like government's always asking our private sector partners for help during disaster. But we're also the method for private sector partners to pass information back to government, to Polk County and the state, and even FEMA at the federal level when there's something going on that they may not see. A Hy-Vee or fairway, if we can't get this road open, we can't get a truck into this town with food and water. And if we can't do that, then we have a cascading downward impact to that community. And sometimes during disaster, it's hard to find those paths for communication. We serve that role because we're sitting right there in the state of USC and we're like, hey, you may not have seen this road. If we can't get this or a route accessing this community, we're going to have some serious issues. So we provide that role as well. So if you haven't joined, I encourage you to reach out, become a partner with Safeguard Iowa. And if you need any of those types of trainings we've talked about, please reach out. We'll try to get something scheduled to assist you in your businesses and your organizations. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Jay. And lastly, I want to give Chris an opportunity. I've talked about CISA a lot today, but just so you could hear it directly from the horse's mouth. I'm not calling you a horse, Chris, but
I've been called worse. As Dutch said, I work for CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. CISA is a relatively new federal agency. We became an agency in 2018, but both Dutch and I both worked for CISA when it was still a headquarters component of federal Homeland Security before it became an agency. I think 2008 was when we became a headquarters component. And so really what CISA does, what we were created for was to provide free resources to help critical infrastructure owners and operators and improve security and resilience at their sites. And so I travel the state of Iowa offering free resources. It's not a bad gig. And really our resources go across the gamut, anything from information sharing. So I can work with folks to get you access to FOU, for official use only, threat streams where you can get information on what those threats are. We also work with folks to get clearances up to the top secret level. We do training and exercises. So we have an active shooter program and an Office of Bombing Prevention that provides no-cost training for active shooter and bombing prevention. Exercises, we've got a headquarters component that does exercises, and then we've got a number, Dutch talked about self-assessments. We've got a bunch of tabletops in a box that they're pre-made tabletop exercises that you can use to insert your name here and develop a really well put together exercise. Assessments. We do all sorts of assessments. So physical security assessments, that's really probably the favorite part of my job is when I get a phone call saying, hey, can you help me do an assessment? And we work really closely with all the counties in Iowa and the state. And so as Dutch said, you've got Safeguard, you've got the counties, you've got state of Iowa SIP, and you've got us. Any one of us, if you're asking us for an assessment, we work really collaboratively, depending on what your organization is, what your security posture already looks like, and we'll get the right person lined up to come do those assessments. And then cybersecurity assessments. So he mentioned the CSET tool. That's a really cool desktop application where you can do your own self-assessment, but we also have cybersecurity advisors that can come out and help you do those assessments in person. So just a lot of different resources that we have available. Everything that we do is free, voluntary, and non-regulatory. So if you ask us to come out, we come and work with you. And if you don't want us there, I'm not banging on anybody's door. We keep a pretty busy schedule. So anyways, thanks for having me up, Dutch.
thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have. If I have to defer to Chris or Jay, I can do that too. So questions, comments, concerns? They're really shy? Do they do a really good job?
You know, Dutch, one of the things that when we do a vulnerability assessment that sometimes conflicts are fire codes and what's best for security practices. And it just seems like when you look at the threat analysis, the chance of a fire in a school that's fully sprinklered is 0%. But the threat of an active intruder is slightly higher. So how is it that the fire codes continually keep trumping what is, which would directly benefit security for a school?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't know if you can all hear it, but kind of wondering why fire code tends to trump security when it comes to safety for schools. Anybody want to guess the last time we had a large school fire where we had a large number of kids that were killed? What year it was?
60s.
53. Never.
58.
Really? 58.
58.
Wow.
Chicago, it was Our Lady of Angels School in Chicago. We had 93 students and teachers that were killed. What do we do differently now? We have all those things that you just talked about. We have sprinkler systems, and we have, how often do we do drills for fires at schools? At least once a quarter, right? Sometimes twice a quarter,
Once a month. depending.
once a month. We do all the drills. We do all the protections that we can have. We have plans for fires. When did we start doing those same things for active shooter? Or are we doing them yet?
Still trying.
Still trying, right? We're still trying to get there. We're still trying to put all those things in place. And sometimes because we've been able to show the reductions in the loss of life and the injuries from fires at schools, because we've been doing all those things successfully for so long, since 1958, some of those things do end up getting a lot more power or a clout, I guess, when it comes to protections. There's still a little bit of a difference because some of the things that we want to do are, we want to hide the windows. We want to make sure that people can't see in for active threat stuff. Fire departments want to be able to see in all those classrooms. They want to be able to see where everybody's at, what's going on. There's door locks that we want to put in place. The fire department doesn't want those door locks because they want people to get in and out as quickly as they possibly can. So there is a little bit of a conflict there, right? And we got to find that common ground. And a lot of times it's bringing the police department and the fire department together during the same walkthrough. Most often from what I've seen is that the fire department comes in one day, police department comes in another day, and you get conflicting information. The more that you can get those folks in the room at the same time, usually the fire visits, those are somewhat mandatory, especially when they're evaluating sprinkler systems and things like that. Police visits are a little bit harder to get. Again, it kind of goes back to that limited manpower. But if you can get them together to have that discussion, usually there's a compromise that can be made. You've got a really great police department that comes out and they work with your school really closely on security issues. Getting them together with the fire department to come to that compromise, I think is going to be critically important for you. I can't speak for the individual agencies and the individual departments, but what I've seen is when you can get them in the same room at the same time, we can come to some sort of an understanding or some sort of an agreement. And it's worth a shot.
Yeah, we do that. I'm just wondering if there's something more at the legislative level that's going to put more importance on the security.
Yeah, that I don't know the answer to as far as the legislation goes. I just know that based on experience and success rates and things like that, the fire department's been able to show such a reduction that what they say is going to carry a lot of weight. Yeah. Well,
There is something in the code, though. I thought that the school had to do at least one exercise or drill or something for active threat, but I don't know if that's been changed over the last.
Yes, no, we do abide by that. There's like a list of, exercises that we have to go through.
Working through school boards throughout the state, it's different. School boards don't want the kids to be involved. They don't want the parents to be involved. Teachers should be involved, but no, there's really not a one size fits all methodology to doing this. We would like to, law enforcement would like to get active shooter or active threat drills just to be ingrained, just like tornado or fire drills are. So it's not a big deal when they lock down, because they're doing that all the time now, even when there's no threat to the school itself. But if it's somewhere in the environment, they lock the facility down. But it's just been a political issue that's tough to overcome. And even though we've had active threats in Minnesota and Perry and anywhere around us, we've had no fires, and we still do the fire drills. And we even do bus drills where we get out of the bus and we shut the back door. But we don't do, I don't know what it is. And Even reunification drills are problematic too, that we don't even discuss how to do that with parents because they're gonna know about it before you know about it. And it is just an issue that the legislature can do as much as they want to do, but if you're not enforcing it, their schools are gonna do what they're gonna do. And you can only just be there when they, when they're ready to do it, just be there for them, I guess, but.
And I don't want to get too sidetracked on just the schools, but how long has the requirement been in place for the high quality school safety plans? Since about 4 years now?
I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe Laura might know too, because we worked together on this. We started over in Johnston, so. That's about right.
No, I think so. I saw some heads nodding over there too. Or-
It is. In the scheme of things, it's a relatively new system. They're required to have a high quality security plan for schools in the state of Iowa. That does include an active threat plan that's in the state of Iowa. And what I found from going to schools and helping the schools out with their safety and security, if you go to one school, you've been to one school, and every single school is its own little kingdom. So they're gonna have different opinions, different ideas, different backgrounds in education that are gonna tell them what they think they need to do. And there is no standardization, Chief. You're absolutely right. There's no one plan or one exercise that fits all when it comes to active threat and active shooter. So again, it's one of those, I wish I had a definite answer for you, but right now it's kind of split. It's all over the board on what people do. Most of the schools that I've gone to will do active threat exercises with staff only. It's more of a walkthrough or a tabletop exercise. So they do drills, but it's really limited to staff only, so.
The teachers' schedules are so packed full of PD time that it's hard to get that safety component crammed in there somewhere. I mean, that's just, we're up against just a whole bunch of stuff and it is an issue.
That we follow the mandates. I mean, evacuation, reverse evacuation, lockdown, lockout. I mean, just we go through a lot of it. So, but I would just wish there was more emphasis coming from, maybe specific guidelines that, they're just as enforceable as the fire codes are. So I know we're still developing this, but.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's one of those things that takes a back burner. And it's unfortunate. We got a couple minutes left. Anybody else? Concerns, ideas? This is my contact information. If you need to get a hold of me for anything, if you're looking at doing a vulnerability assessment, you want to know any more about the tools. If you'd like to sit down one-on-one and go through some of the tools so you can see how they're used, I'm happy to do that with you. So please send me an email, let me know. Otherwise, thanks for coming, and I'll turn it back over to Brett.
Thank you. We do have the evaluation sheets at your table, so if you could take a couple minutes before you leave to fill those out, give us any feedback that you have. We certainly appreciate that, and we'll take that into consideration for our planning. Next month, I believe it is October 29th, the fourth Tuesday, our topic is going to be the Iowa Heart Foundation will be here to talk about bystander CPR. They're going to bring along some of their equipment. Those will be the hands-on interactive portions to it. So I heard them speak to another one of our responder groups just about some of the improved outcomes, some of the kind of amazing statistics that they have on the importance of bystander CPR and how that can play into your organizations for your staff, for your frontline staff, especially if you've got a lot of people in and through the building. So you can look forward to that. We'll hope to see you back here in October. And thank you for joining us.